Hi guys, welcome back to Ransom Bands, WJ's official entertainment podcast brought to you by The Pitch. I'm Remember Head, your host, and let's get into it. I don't really have, I know in before episodes I said I was going to make it a little bit more fun, and it's this is an entertainment podcast, but I feel like sometimes I have to kind of bring in important topics to talk about. And because our specialty issue at The Pitch is dedicated to mental health, I thought that I could bring something that I know about mental health, and I want to talk about the Black community's experience with mental health. Of course, I'm not going to sit here and talk about every single Black person's experience with mental health. I know a lot of people have positive experiences with mental health, and if they have negative experiences, ways to get help, they have positive experiences with that. And then I know people who don't have positive experiences and who can't really get help that easily, and I just want to talk about why it's kind of like that. And I feel like there's a lot of things with the Black community that we just don't get help with when it comes to mental health, because Black people are more 20% more and yes, I've researched on this and I'm reading my notes, some of my notes. They're 20%, we are 20% more likely to experience mental health problems like depression and anxiety. And I'm just gonna pull up some of my own experiences with mental health. Growing up, I don't think I really had a name for if I ever experienced bouts of sadness and really bad hopelessness and just things that people here in this country honestly attribute to just kind of anxiety or a little bit of depression. I never really felt I had those things. And also I lived in Ethiopia, and in Ethiopia it's not really common to go and see a therapist. Nobody I knew back home went and spoke to a therapist. And I know in Ethiopia we put a lot of emphasis on religion, and it was if you do not feel good, if you're Christian, you go to church and you speak to your pastor. If you're Muslim, you go to the mosque. You're gonna have to figure that out with God. And that's a great way. If you're religious, go for it. No, there's no way I'm gonna have to stop you. But I just feel not everything is attributed to you have the devil inside you. I don't know, that's not a great way. I am religious, but I don't think I've really explained that well. But that's kind of how I felt. I felt everybody didn't really have, and if they had and of course people dealt with mental health back in Ethiopia, mental health issues and mental health crises, but it wasn't a big deal. In Africa, and I'm gonna have to say Africa, even though I'm not from all of Africa, but I do think Africans don't put that much emphasis. And because we're kind of isolated and we're not in Western countries where there is, especially there's when you come to America and when you go to European countries, I'm gonna say this, even though white people can experience negative experiences with mental health, mental people, they can't reach out to therapists as easily. At least there's a knowledge that you could get therapists. In Ethiopia, I don't think I could ever go and say oh yeah, I think I'm gonna go speak to a therapist. In all my years of in my 10 plus years of living there, growing up there, and I know the capital city the back of my hand, I don't think I've ever seen a proper therapist. I could be wrong, and people could text me and be no, Marone, I dead ass knew a therapist. I'm gonna be no, I did not know that. I did not know where the therapist was, and point me to them because I didn't know. And that's the thing, we didn't really put emphasis on it, and it was kind of just you have to deal with it yourself, and that's sucky. At least here, I could say when I see other people, when I see honest to God, when I see white people going and saying I have a therapist and everything, that makes me want to be okay, it's good to see that there's that kind of influence, because even when I speak to my other friends, my other Black friends here, I don't know, I know a few of my Black friends they started going and getting therapy because they have mental health, they need to get they need to seek help, and that's what should be. It shouldn't have to be a fight with your parents when you have to go and you want to see a therapist. Like, it should be as normalized as going to the doctor. Like, I feel like you go to your doctor for a broken bone. You should go and see your doctor if you want to talk about your mental health crises. Like, I don't think there has to be like a total emphasis on like what exactly your problems are and like break down, and you have to make yourself feel valid. Like, you don't have to do that to yourself. And especially with everything that's going on, especially like ever since, and not even since like 2020, like before 2020, with the BLM movement. Of course, the BLM movement has been going on way before 2020, but I feel like people care about it more. But even before that, like, there's a lot of things that goes on. I'm just going to talk about this country now, but there's a lot of things that go on in this country that Black people face every single day. We face like microaggressions, even just normal racism. Like, even when I'm in Walter Johnson, the amount of microaggressions that I deal with, like, it's just like there's so many things of just being Black and being like a Black girl. And I know Black boys at school. I'm not going to call anybody like a Black man or Black woman if you're under the age of 18, but I just feel like there's so many things that people deal with, especially Black kids at this school and Black kids around the country, that it should be normalized, but it's not normalized, and we don't address mental health in this community, which sucks. And I just wish like we could do. I think also a really big thing into why Black people don't see therapists as much, it's because of the lack of Black therapists. Like, Black psychiatrists only make up 4%. Imagine 4%. Like, y'all, I'm telling y'all, this is I'm not even gonna say much, but it also deals with like stigma, because I remember when I was a kid and when I used to be like really fascinated with psychology back in like 8th grade, I think. Mind you, I knew absolutely nothing about psychology, and when my friends told me what they had to do in AP Psych, that turned me off real quick. But when I went to be a psychiatrist in like 8th grade, and I told my dad about it, and he pretty much like shut me down. I mean, granted, the only jobs you can get as like a little Ethiopian girl is either a lawyer if you like English, and a math and engineer. I'm a doctor and engineer. My bad. I don't know why I said that. Granted, those are the only careers I could have gotten, and psychiatrists didn't really like. Even though I tried to argue it was like a doctor, it just wasn't a doctor. But that also helps like the social stigma of it. Like, I think my dad was just like, okay, you're gonna go and like talk to people about their feelings. Like, what does that do? Like, what does that help with? I'm like, Dad, what do you mean? So sorry, I cracked myself up with that one. But it's things like this. Like, Black kids should be encouraged to go and become psychiatrists, because that can help everybody out in the long run. Because I know me personally, if I had to go to a psychiatrist, I don't think I want to be anybody who isn't a Black person, because even when like I said, I don't know if like psychiatrists are supposed to like empathize with you or something, but like when I'm explaining what exactly I feel, like all my feelings are gonna go back to the fact that I'm a Black girl in this country. Like, I think really, honest to God, a lot of my feelings, and even like in Ethiopia, how I grew up was specifically like the things that happened to me in Ethiopia really had to do with me being like a girl. Like, it had me like in that position because I was a female. Like, obviously, like everybody's Black in Ethiopia, so I didn't have like any racial issues or any racial hang-ups, but I had like ethnic hang-ups, like tribes and everything breaking out, and nobody really understands that like a Black person does. So at least in my field, like, there's a lot of things that people aren't just gonna understand, and no shade to like other people of color, and like of course we can all like benefit from one another, but there are just some things that are just personal. So if you have like a Black psychiatrist, I know people feel more comfortable, and the fact that there aren't that many Black psychiatrists just goes to the fact that this is like, that's why a lot of Black kids don't go out and they don't seek help, and a lot of Black people don't go and they don't seek help because of the systemic barriers. I don't know, guys, why I can't speak, but because of systemic barriers. This is something that's like what I've experienced and like what I've seen, but I know, like, I don't know if a lot of people have kind of gone through that, but I remember I'm going like super candid in this one, but I remember like I heard a bunch of family members talking about like what would happen if someone was to go to therapy. And I remember like one of my family members were just talking about like oh yeah, the first response is always the fact that therapists might put you on meds, which isn't always the case. Once I've like done my research, it's not always the case. They're not always going to put you on medication, but I think like the stigma like is like that they're always going to put you on medication that's going to kind of make you not, quote unquote, not human, which just isn't true. But that's the idea of it, that it's just going to make you kind of like out of it. It's going to make you loopy. It's going to shut down your feelings. It's going to make you more depressed, which isn't really the case. Obviously, I didn't really go and research into like how therapists, like how that medication works, because I'm not on it and I haven't really like looked into it, but I just know those aren't it. Like, I think the worst I've seen was nausea. Like, I'm sorry, like it doesn't look that different from everything else. It sucks, yes, absolutely, without a doubt. Medication is medication. It has its own brand of side effects, but it's not gonna be lethal. I don't know if that's like a huge stereotype that other people kind of heard in their own families, like the fear of being put on medication. But I do know like medication in the Black community, like there is always going to be like distrust, just because of, especially in this country, like especially how it's kind of been administered. And I know even in Ethiopia, like even in Africa, like Europeans used to come to Africa and they would try to like test all the vaccinations. Like, this might be a myth, but this is kind of like what I grew up hearing. But like the fact that people kind of like throw away medication to Africa and like kind of have like the citizens deal with what they deal with, like that's always going to be like a stigma in the back of my mind as well. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not biased, but in my family, like in my community, that's kind of like how we interpret things. Like, sometimes like I can't always go and just trust my instincts and trust medication. Like, I'm always going to have that in the back of my head. And I think that's a lot of what Black people also have in the back of their heads, which sucks, but it's what it is. It's history. With that, I just want to also not increase, guys, I'm telling y'all, I cannot speak today. I'm so sorry. But I want to just like capitalize more on the medical mistrust I was talking about. Medical mistrust runs super, super deep in the Black community, and not just because of the vaccinations and like the Tuskegee, not just because, you guys know what I'm talking about, I'm so sorry, but not just because of that, but there's just so many things that I remember. My aunt is a nurse, and we were talking about how she had a patient who was a Black woman, and she wanted medication after post-surgery because she was in a lot of pain, because she was post-surgery, and other nurses would just not give her painkillers. Would just not give her painkillers because they did not believe that she was actually in pain. They did not believe she was in pain, and they believed that she was either she was an addict, or that she kind of, not addict, but like that she just was lying, and they just didn't want to give her painkillers, or they just didn't want to, risk the chance of her becoming an addict just because she's Black, and she would have that kind of like thoughts. No, she wasn't. She was in serious amount of pain. So my aunt gave her the medication, and the doctor agreed with her later on. But it just shows like there's a lot of Black people who just don't believe, and they just don't. There's just a lot of Black people who just don't believe in the doctors because their doctors and their healthcare providers just don't believe in them. And that could also be a thing with mental health, and which sucks because, like I said, and like I wanted to say earlier, there are millions of Black people in this world, and just in the US alone, who deal with problems on a day-to-day basis because of their race, and that increases their anxiety, that increases their chances of getting depression, that increases their mental health issues. And as a Black person who I do have positive experiences of being able to go and get therapy and get that mental health help that I need, it just sucks that I don't see everybody else kind of getting that. And it's just like, it's not gonna, obviously this little 20-minute podcast is not going to, you know, make everybody go and like talk to their parents and like see a therapist. But like, I wish like day to day, like one person at a time, like we could kind of just like help that. Like these issues and like these problems and like the psychiatrist versus like that mental, like getting like the mental health, like crossing that barrier into getting help for your like mental health problems in the Black community, it's not going to just like Rome wasn't built in a day, and that trust isn't going to build in a day. But it is working. I've seen a lot of people, like I love when a lot of people say like they went and they spoke to their therapist about it. Like I love hearing that. I'm just like, oh my god, yes, progress. But it's not gonna just like fix all in one day, and that's totally fine. But like as long as like one person at a time is fantastic. It's fantastic. And obviously like I keep saying this because I'm just like a pessimist and I'm an optimist all the, like I don't know what the mix of that is. Somebody search that up and tell me about it. But it's not going to be fixed in one day, but we're moving closer and closer every day. And these issues that like, and then like the mistrust and medical mistrust is not going to fix itself unless that is totally not up to Black people. That is up to the medical community to stop writing really weird reports on how Black people can't feel pain and can't feel like upset with things, to not like, so they can't like warrant a reaction to anything. That's not on the Black community. That's on the medical community. That's them. Obviously there are Black people in the medical community, but I'm definitely not talking to them, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking to the others. But just again, and I want to say this to any Black person who might be listening to this, if you ever feel like those feelings, don't hesitate to go and call a hotline. There are millions of ways to go online. That's like, that sucks that I have to say that, but if you can't get that kind of like support at home, don't hesitate to talk to someone. Like if you can go and speak to your counselor, if you don't trust your counselor, if you can speak to like anonymous chats online, like if you want to talk to like a hotline, there's always going to be ears listening. Like, and if you can't do anything, so if you don't want to talk to anybody, find ways that are going to make you feel better. Like when I used to go in and out of like bouts of, I don't want to call it depression, but when I just used to kind of like feel like a lot of sadness, I used to write, I used to take walks. I used to find things that I would take comfort in to make me feel better until something else came along. So, and I don't want to just say that for Black people. I want to say that for everybody. Don't wait until you really feel like you're at the end of your rope to get help. And if you can't get help, then try in some ways to help yourself. Like, it sounds so mean when I say, it's so weird when I say that, but when I'm not a therapist, I can't always help them. But I'm only a child, but I'm only a high schooler, babes. But I feel like there's always going to be people who want to hear what you have to say in your circle, in school. Like, I used to proper sit in front of a mirror and just talk to myself for hours if I was feeling sad. Like that used to make me feel really weird when I say it out loud, but it made me feel like a certain way. Like I would always like process things better when I write things down, when I talk out loud, when I find things that comfort me. So just know that you're never alone. And if you ever feel like you're at the end of your rope, like just know that you are loved and you are cared for, and you will always be someone to someone. So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed my little informative rant. I'm just gonna call them informative rants now. I might have to change the name of this little podcast, but yeah, that's all I have for today. And if you guys enjoyed that, I hope you guys did. Just leave a comment, leave a thumbs up, and I will be back in a few weeks to talk about something completely different. I feel like next time I'm not gonna talk about like I feel like I've been talking about like heavy stuff, and I totally said I was gonna leave my social justice warrior persona and just go into like my perfect pop culture things for this podcast, but who knows, might bring it back. Okay guys, that's all I have for today. Love you guys. Bye.